First keynote speaker has arrived, and so we want to get things going. We're very excited to hear what she has to say, and we're so thrilled that Deputy Chief of Mission from the EU, Ruth Bajada, is able to join us. It's so timely, and the EU is such an important relationship to the United States and to CSI members. So certainly I want to say a huge welcome to all of you. Thanks so much for joining us. This is our 14th annual Global Services Summit. It seems like just yesterday these were started. I remember when I was back at USTR and started attending. And so I think it's an important tradition, and we hope that it continues to really contribute to the substance of the trade policy debate, particularly on services and digital trade. And today we have a great lineup of speakers from certainly our colleagues in foreign governments and also the private sector, think tank experts, and the administration. And we're going to be looking at promoting services, reciprocal services in digital trade to drive American competitiveness. So again, a big thank you to all of you for joining us. And I want to thank our sponsors of the summit to help making it possible to put on today's program. Before we jump into the program, I want to share that CSI has just released its latest services statistics on a state, national, and congressional district level. They're now available on CSI's website, and you can find the statistics for each state rotating on the screens as you walk around during our breaks and our networking reception at the end. I now have the pleasure of introducing Sarah O'Hare-O'Neill, CSI's board chair and vice president and deputy general counsel of CELA Global Trade at Microsoft. And I also want to thank Sarah for her great leadership and support as our board chair. So Sarah, I welcome you to the stage to introduce DCM Bajada.
Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Sarah O'Hare-O'Neill, Microsoft's Vice President and Deputy General Counsel for Global Trade and the chair of CSI's board. I'm so pleased to be here today to open the 2025 CSI Global Services Summit. As Chrissy mentioned, we have a packed lineup, and there's certainly a lot to discuss this year. And as we approach the new landscape of reciprocal tariff negotiations, on behalf of CSI, I'd like to highlight the importance of removing non-tariff barriers for services and investment as part of ongoing and future trade negotiations. I also want to underscore the critical role that services and digital trade play in supporting manufacturing and agriculture, since digital services are integrated into so many goods exports. So removing services and digital trade barriers really benefits the broader economy. And I'd like to point out that the U.S. enjoys a very significant services trade surplus, and it's important to make sure that we can sustain and grow that going forward. For now, CSI remains actively involved in promoting priorities for those countries that are involved in reciprocal tariff negotiations, as well as for USMCA and China. We want to ensure that the many trade barriers that CSI members face can be acknowledged and addressed. And in closing, I just want to say, as has been mentioned, that we really appreciate the support of the sponsors for today's summit, and also to the CSI members for putting on this event today. We continue to believe that we can make an important contribution to trade policy discussions, and I look forward to the discussions ahead. And next, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Ruth Bajada, who's deputy head of the EU delegation in Washington. And I want to highlight just how important the US-EU relationship remains for services and digital trade companies. We at CSI greatly appreciate our excellent working relationship with the EU delegation here in Washington, as well as the Commission in Brussels. And because it's an extremely busy time in the trade world, we especially appreciate your willingness to take the time to speak with us today. So we're delighted to welcome Ms. Bajada, who has over 23 years of experience in EU affairs and 20 years in foreign policy. Prior to her current post, she was Deputy Director, Head of the Division of the United States and Canada and the European External Action Services. And she's also served as the political advisor to the European External Action Services Secretary General, and in earlier roles has been posted both in Chile and Lebanon. And Ms. Bajada joined the European institutions in 2002 and has also worked at the European Parliament and the Secretariat General of the Council of Ministers. So I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Ruth Bajada, and I will hand the floor to her.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Sarah. With such a name, you make me feel at home. Certainly, a lot of Irish in town. I've just moved to Washington a couple of months ago, so it's fairly new. I moved here on the 1st of February, and what a time to move here. It's been quite an incredible couple of months, and it seems that it's going to be on the same trajectory in the coming months. But I feel still new to the Washington traffic, but I already know some faces in the room, so it makes me feel that slowly I'm building the network here. But thank you very much for welcoming me. Certainly, the discussions that you will have today and what I'd like to the views that I'd like to share with you is something that is occupying probably a good 60 to 70% of our work at the EU delegation, and is certainly very much the focus of our work here in Washington at the moment. And that's, of course, our trade relationship with the United States, which is the biggest relationship that we have with all the partners in the world. So I'd like to take a moment to share some views with you on the importance of the services trade, the current frictions that we're looking at, and the potential implications for trade in services. Certainly from our perspective, the European Union very much appreciates the importance of trade in services, and we very much know, as one of your past chair of CSI, Laura Lane had put it, you cannot make it, move it, buy it, or sell it without services. So of that, we're very cognizant. And we also, as has been already mentioned, the United States is exceptional good at all things services, and that's very much already also stated in the analysis put out by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. There, the United States has exported 1.1 trillion in services and is a global leader. And when it comes to the European Union, there again, the United States has quite an advantage. The US exported 295 billion in services in the EU and imported 206 billion, which leads us to a surplus of $89 billion for the United States. And while the numbers are, especially when it comes to services, tell us very much a positive story, we in the EU are very much concerned on the trajectory and when we see where we see things going, in particular on when we see the rules that have governed the trading relationships for decades and have provided the foundation for mutually beneficial expansion of trade in both goods and services being questioned as they are today. From our perspective, the United States administration has acted unilaterally to impose significant tariffs against all trading partners, friends and foe alike. And even though several courts have ruled that at least some of these tariffs were without statutory authority, it might take months before these cases are resolved. I will certainly not opine on the legality or the strategy of imposing large tariffs against virtually all products that the U.S. economy depends on, but certainly certainly our position is that this very much harms the services economy and will land particularly hard on small and medium-sized businesses, on which the European Union also counts on very much. And from our perspective, this is a bit, this is where the question comes, because we know that the United States itself has been one of the largest beneficiaries of the trading rules that have been set up. The United States has been at the center of setting up these trading rules and the economic order that we have today. And it's very much with this in mind that we question what is happening, and in particular as the United States is a highly competitive export-oriented economy and stands very much to gain from these rules. But from our perspective, I wanted to let you know and reassure you that the European Union is certainly wants or has it as a priority to put this relationship on the right track. And we are certainly very much doing all that is necessary to open talks, to open negotiations, and doing this both at the very political level. So you would have seen Commissioner Šefčovič very much engaging both with USTR Greer and with Secretary Lutnick. He's been here twice already since the beginning of the administration. There have been various phone calls, I would say, on a daily basis. And of course, also President von der Leyen speaking to President Trump. So for us, this is a priority and this is what we're working on. We also had a technical team coming into town last week to start also more technical conversations with the USTR and the Department of Commerce. I think you've heard a lot of times on the news that the EU did not, is not cooperating or did not make an offers. I just want to reassure you that the European Union, yes, did make solid offers. We have made proactive proposals in all the areas raised by the United States, including tariffs and non-tariff barriers, economic security, the facilitation of increased private sector investment, and also the possibility for strategic purchases. In addition, we're also doing some important and internal work within the union at the moment, and that is we're going through a big simplification agenda of our rules. And whilst we are doing this, and we had started the simplification agenda of our own rules way before the election in the United States. In fact, this was part of the program of the European Commission for the next 5 years. We still think that in simplifying our rules, this would benefit not only the EU and the internal EU economy, but also the United States and companies that are operating in our market. That said, I mean, as I said, we're doing our best. We have an offer. We have solid teams. We're working at the political and technical level, but the reality is that we are operating in a very difficult environment. Whereby we don't know what the goalposts keep on moving, where tariffs keep on being added. For instance, the increase of tariffs on steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%, and the continuous introduction of new Section 232 investigations. And of course, that makes our negotiating reality very difficult. But I want to reassure everyone in the room that what we're looking for is a fair, balanced, and mutually beneficial outcome of this, and we will not leave any stone unturned in that process. I'll tell you a bit what we are doing and how we are preparing also in the negotiations, and how we are preparing the environment in the EU. As I said, it's a very difficult environment at the moment. The reality is that the US currently applies additional tariffs on around 70% of EU exports to the United States, worth approximately $379 billion. This includes US tariffs now on 50% on EU exports of steel, aluminum, and derivative products, 25% on EU exports of autos and auto parts, and the so-called reciprocal tariffs of 10% on almost other goods. There are 7 ongoing 232 investigations, and this may increase the amount of tariffs to 97% of our exports to the United States, which is of the worth of 549 billion euros. So we're speaking about big numbers here. And from our side, we see this as a rather unbalanced picture, because when you see the overall, what the EU puts on US trade overall, there's a mere 2.7% from our side on tariffs on United States products. So at some point, we will not be able to sustain such an unbalanced situation, and we will be asked to respond. So, so we're making preparations for that, and we're trying to keep the balance and trying to reach out and see if there are ways that we can work with the administration. So we were very happy to hear that the recent statements made that the United States would like to make the e-commerce moratorium permanent, and it's something that we would welcome to work with the United States on. We also are ready to offer a good package of work on economic security, and we believe that we could do some good work also in terms of AI. And again, we do have a number of simplification packages on our side that could look at European and American interests at the same time. The reality is that the service industry benefits a lot also from the European market. I see also in the room some representatives of tech companies. Tech companies very much operate in the EU market and benefit from our 450 million people. Just by way of numbers and just by in terms of reality checks, there are some of the big American tech companies have many more users in the EU market than in the United States. For instance, Amazon has 194 million users in the EU. Instagram has 269. Google Search 356 million users, and Microsoft generates more than 40% of its global turnover in the EU. So we do also know that we have something to bring to the table, and that's why we also want a positive agenda with the United States. But as I said, regrettably, we also have to prepare ourselves. So we are looking at rebalancing, how we can rebalance the situation. At the moment, we start very softly, and we have at the moment a list, a rebalancing list of worth 21 billion of US export to the unjustified tariffs that on EU steel. And we are looking at and having stakeholder consultation regarding another 95 billion to respond to the so-called reciprocal tariffs and the car tariffs. And eventually, we are also contemplating potential export restrictions of the value of 4.4 billion. And there's also the EU has over time put together an array of instruments to respond to such economic threats. And one of them is the EU's anti-coercion instruments. In December 2023, the EU adopted this new tool to deter and respond to economic coercion, and thereby better defending its interests and those of the member states. The tool provides a structure to respond in a well-calibrated way to stop the coercion. It gives the EU a wide range of possible countermeasures when a country refuses to remove what's considered as economic coercion. And this would include the imposition of tariffs, restrictions on trade and services, and trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, and restriction on access to foreign direct investments and public procurement. It is, of course, these latter provisions that catch people's attention, particularly as the US has such a large services surplus with the EU. And in this context, I will underscore how notable it is that the US administration has now introduced the concept of tariffication of services, imposing tariffs and fees on maritime transportation services in the Shipbuilding 301, and in suggesting tariffs on films made outside of the United States, which these days cross borders in digital form rather than on reel of film. The ACI regulation establishes objective criteria for selecting and designing a response measure. These focus on effectiveness of stopping the coercion and avoiding negative economic or other consequences in the Union. An indicative list of countermeasures and the conditions they must meet, and an indicative list of countermeasures and the conditions they must meet. In first instance, that they are in the Union's interests are provided in the regulation. Among these are border measures, example, tariffs, quotas, and rules of transit, restrictions on public procurement participation, restrictions on the provision of services of foreign direct investment, intellectual property rights, and their commercial exploitation, as well as banking, insurance, and access to financial services and capital markets, or market access restrictions on chemicals and phytosanitary products. We are not yet at the point where the EU has decided to deploy the ACI, but certainly it is one of the instruments that we have ready to be used. So unfortunately, I don't bring much good news, aside from the fact that you can count on us that we will work very hard to get this relationship on the right track. We also count on many of you in the room that benefit from your relationship with the EU and the different EU member states, to make also the case with the US administration of how harmful this situation can be. From our side, we very much would like to get to a positive outcome and a positive agenda with the administration, and rather to focus on areas where and get the relationship where we can address common concerns vis-a-vis other concerns that we may have globally, because we do share concerns with the United States. In particular, for instance, of some of the difficulties that trade with China provides. So there are many aspects that we are ready to work on, but unfortunately, the situation where we find ourselves today is very much focused on solving and getting a positive agenda, but also preparing for what could be necessary. I hope that I will not be able to join you for many of the discussions, but some of my colleagues will be here in the room. So I'll be very happy to listen to some of the discussions, and anything that we could also learn, and any messages that you'd like to pass. We're very happy also to work with you, and our team is always ready for cooperation. Thank you.